This week, Conflict Zone is in Geneva, home of the United Nations headquarters in Europe. My guest is Martin Kobler, head of the UN mission in Libya. Thousands of refugees are making the dangerous journey to Europe. Does he believe the UN can bring hope to Libya? Martin Kobler, welcome to Conflict Zone.
It's a pleasure to be here with you, Michel.
As you entered the position as head of the United Nations support mission in Libya, you said your goal is to prevent Libya from becoming the next Syria. Have you managed to achieve that?
Well, this is a very ambitious goal, but we managed so far to achieve it.
It's ambitious, you managed it, or you didn't?
Yes, and we did, because you do not read as much about Libya in the media than you read about Syria.
But that's not the point. To read or not to read, Libya is again a state of profound crisis. 3 different governments competing for power and resources, and the majority of the country is still at war. What a failure.
Well, just let me contradict you here, Michel. I mean, the country is not at war. It's not even a civil war. How many people...
But there is violence.
There's
violence, aggressivity.
There is criminality.
And it's so there is or a civil war or a criminal war, but there is a situation that the population is endangered.
Indeed, and that's why we are working for making the situation better for them.
But it is not.
It is much better than it is in Syria, and it did not slide into total chaos. Yes, there are rival governments, and yes, there is criminality, and the country does not have a central authority, as in other states also. But it's contained. The conflict so far is contained, but I do not want to belittle the problems. That's why we are there and working for the better.
You're just doing it because reports of massive human rights violations, the collapse of justice and financial system. It doesn't sound like there's much between Syria and Libya, with one different: there is not the active war. The rest is similar.
Well, we managed in the last year to have a government of national unity, which is recognized by the international community.
Wait. It has to, firstly, as I learned, it has to be recognized by the population. It isn't.
The oil production went up. There is money coming into the country.
We spoke about the government. You said that the government is recognized by the international community. I ask you again, is it recognized by the population?
It's not recognized by all the population.
So, what is that? Where the authority?
There is no state authority in
Is it
Libya.
a government? Or is it a paper?
No, it is a government with a limited authority. There are other rival governments, and this is the situation as it is. And
does this government have the authority? Legal questions, policy, whatever? Or is it only a little bit a showdown to have the opportunity to say, Libya is getting better, we have a government?
Well, during the last year there was the fight, for example, to answer your question, against the Islamic State. When I came to the country, huge areas of the Gulf of Sirte were dominated by the Islamic State, like a caliphate. The government of national accord, steered the fight against Daesh with American airstrike support, and today Daesh, the business model of Daesh is interrupted.
Yeah, but the business model of the so-called Islamic State is still existing, also existing in Libya. But let's be honest, after our criteria, Libya is a failed state, isn't it? No authority of a government, no authority of that what we know is the minimum of a state building.
Indeed.
It's a failed state.
I would not categorize it as a failed state. It is a state where we had a peace accord, which the Libyans signed way back in December 2015.
Does this government has any authority in his own country?
This government has authority in his own country. As I tried to explain to you, the authority was to fight the Islamic State. And do not belittle the problem of Islamic State. It was a caliphate torturing people, which stretched over 240 kilometers in the Gulf of Sirte. This is an end. Now, the forces loyal to the Presidency Council and the Governor of National Accord are dominating
again,
this area.
you mix both cases. Again, you mix both cases. Regardless of that, what you just told us, my question is again, we know that even a dictatorship is something else than a failed state, because there is the authority of the dictator. Here in Libya, would you say there is any authority in the country?
No, there are many authorities, and you have to start.
Many?
You have to start.
One of the government?
Many. You have to start in a fragmented state, which was suffering from 42 years of Gaddafi dictatorship. And by the way, also Gaddafi created the illusion of a state. Yeah? He was the strong man. But there were never in Libya strong institutions. And it doesn't come overnight to build up strong institutions.
But I want to quote you. Here is what you said to the Security Council just a few weeks ago. We should be honest enough to see that the optimism and confidence of Shirat, that means the peace agreement, has faded. Instead, I see, you are the one, frustration, disappointment, sometimes anger, and often it is justified. This is a declaration of bankruptcy, isn't it?
No, not at all.
This is a declaration of hope.
This is an encouragement to go to a better world and to go back to a better Libya.
But the state of today is, instead, I see frustration, disappointment, and anger. This is the status of today, right?
Right.
Your mission headquarters are stationed in Tunis. Is that so?
Well, we have our main office in Tunis. However, we are working from inside Libya.
Why
and we're in the
are
process
you
of
not
going back.
in Libya if things are going better?
I just tell you, we are moving to Libya now. Preparations have been made, and you will see in the next months that we are moving with all our office into Libya. For security reasons, it is not like Iraq or other countries. There is no unified security structure.
So it's worse. The security situation is worse.
The security situation is much more fragmented, I say.
So worse.
It's not worse. There are no bomb explosions like in Baghdad.
But
not
you
a single
don't
one.
want to be there.
Because
and you didn't be there.
No, we want to be there. The decision is made. And by the way, we were there until 2014. We were evacuated and we are going back. Preparations are made, and watch TV, you will see in the next months how that we are going back. We have to, and by the way, we are working from inside Tripoli, but not in a public way. Yeah, but we are there with some person.
Let's speak about the legitimacy of the government. How much legitimacy does the government of national accord, the GNA, which is backed by your bosses at the UN, have?
Well, they lack legitimacy, like the other institutions also. The parliament lacks legitimacy. There are only a few people coming to the meetings. The institutions lack legitimacy. This is a fact. And we are working to make it better for the people who are suffer from this situation.
But if a government has a lack of legitimacy, isn't it a problem by itself, by definition?
Yes, it is a problem.
Members of the GNA itself say it has failed. In January, one of its deputy leaders resigned, saying, I quote, "I don't think we are unaware of what the citizens are suffering, but we are incapable, and I admit that we are failures because we didn't solve the problems. And the UN and you are still backing this failed government. Why?"
Lack of alternatives. It is a lack of alternatives. If you want to get out of a civil war, and this we did, we negotiated a peace agreement, the so-called Libyan political agreement, having a presidency council, a parliament, and a kind of second chamber. So one has to start with the first step. And after 42 years of Gaddafi dictatorship, after the revolution, after the civil war, you have to start with the first step.
You know,
and this doesn't come overnight.
This argument, lack of alternatives, I'm listening to this argument since plenty of years. And very often, because of this argument, the international community or America or the Russians decided to support a person or a government, and this was even worse than that what happened before.
And here it's better. Here it is better. We have a presidency council which went into Tripoli on the 1st of April last year. Would you have thought that it would be still in Tripoli in May 2016, more than 1 year later, with no army in place, with Salafist, jihadist, with other armed groups, mafia groups around in Tripoli, that a fledgling government is still in Tripoli with our support?
In Tripoli, very often they have to meet at the Mediterranean because their own security perspective is a very, very bad one. I mean, the failure is not due to the political constellation, maybe. Maybe it is also because the sides have lost confidence in you personally.
Yes, true. We have our opinion polls and the confidence. We always check the trust factor in the United Nations and, of course, in the boss of the United Nations. There is a considerable portion of these stakeholders who just want us out in order to do their own business. But yes, in particular the human traffickers. Of course, they say they don't have confidence in us because they can do what they want.
But they can even do what they want till today, and even the UN is there.
It is always difficult to prove negative facts. What if the trainings would not take place? Would there maybe more refugees coming? But I agree that human trafficking is one of the most serious and appalling problems of the country. That's why state authority has to come back to this country, and that's what we are working for.
Not only the criminals are accusing you, the Liberal Party accused you this April, few weeks ago, for being biased and working against Libyan interests by attempting to settle African migrants in Libya.
Well, this is nonsense, because I never requested this. You see, Germany has free media. Where are the free media in Libya?
Where are the free media in Moscow? Where are they in other countries of the world?
In Libya. I'm working in Libya, not in Moscow. Now, in Libya, we have a problem of communication. Every warlord, every party has their propaganda
Is General Khalifa Haftar a warlord?
General Khalifa Haftar is the general commander of the Libyan National Army.
Is he a warlord, or is he a commander of the Libyan National Army, or is it the same?
No, I said he is the commander of the Libyan National Army who does not recognize the Presidency Council. The agreement foresees very clearly, let me say this, that the Presidency Council is the supreme commander of the Libyan army.
Which is not respected by Haftar.
Exactly, which is not respected by Haftar. That's why I was with Haftar last time 2 weeks ago. I met him, and I just also here now in Geneva we are doing this interview. We have meetings, you see, to bring everybody on board.
Yeah, but you are not the only one. Haftar is frequent visitor to Moscow. His army receives support and training from Russia. What do you think is Russia's motivation in Libya? The same one as in Syria?
Well, you have more information than myself about the support and the training.
Come on, don't be naive. You know that the Russians are in Libya. And that Haftar is a part of it.
I tell you that you have more information than myself. I know about many who are in Libya, but not the Russians. Yeah? However, the Haftar frequently visits Moscow. You're right, is received by the Minister of Defense.
He's doing holidays there.
No, he's going to Moscow in order to rally political support. He is in Conakry and he is in Cairo as well. Once every month he is in Cairo in order to gain political support.
Interesting, because Russia is also very influenced in Cairo. Is Russia in?
Russia is a member of the Security Council of the United Nations, being very much bound by the Security Council resolution. Russia is one of my bosses, and they are the ones who support the Libyan political agreement.
So what does it mean, Russia is one of your bosses?
Well, that they support the Libyan political agreement. They gave us the mandate.
They support, like in Syria, they support constructively, or it's a destructive?
No, it's a constructive support.
It's a constructive support.
In the Security Council, I see a constructive role of Russia, together with the other members of the Security Council, about the Libyan political agreement. I'm responsible for Libya, not for Syria. I see a constructive role in the Security Council, and I, as you quoted, have to report to the Security Council once every 3 months. I see a constructive role of Russia. There are other players who have roles, I mean other regional powers, and I encourage everybody to use their respective relations to their constituency in a constructive way.
But let's speak about this General Haftar's LNA. They have been accused of the killing of women and children, illegal detentions, summary executions, torture. Haftar is a relict of the old regime. Do you believe he can be a constructive part of a peace settlement, such a man?
I mean, these human rights violations I take up regularly with the Libyan National Army and also with General Haftar himself. If you read even my public statements, I also am in contact with the International Criminal Court, with the General Prosecutor Fatou Bensouda on human rights violations.
So what's about him? He's a criminal?
Your question was whether he should have a role in the setup of the army. The answer is yes.
How do you feel? I mean, listening to you, how do you feel when negotiating with alleged mass murders?
Well, the human rights violations have to address, and I do it. I do it publicly, I do it discreetly. We do what we can here.
How do you feel?
I'm in contact with the International Criminal Court. That's how it is. We have to work with those forces who are on the ground.
According to Human Rights Watch, Libya has now about 500,000 internally displaced people. Much of this happened under your supervision.
No, it's not. It did not happen under our supervision because we are the United Nations with a separate mandate. We do not have an executive mandate in the country. I'm not Paul Bremer here. Yeah, Paul Bremer was different. And you judge yourself whether this worked. The international community decided not to have an executive mandate. There was a trusteeship of the UN after the independence. This is not the way we go. There is not a Paul Bremer. There is not, as the UN is working in Kosovo, where there is an executive element. It's not like Bosnia and Herzegovina. No, we try to organize a process called the Libyan political agreement.
But are you successful? But are you successful? Last year you said to the Italian paper La Stampa, quote, "It is crucial to re-establish security in the country to counter human trafficking and that it is intertwined with terrorism." This is your mandate. How successful are you? These are your words.
The question is, how successful are the Libyans? I think you did not really understand the system, what we are doing. It is up to the Libyans to organize their state. It's Libyan ownership. It's the Libyan sovereignty. Our role is to organize the process to enable the Libyans to establish their security structure. This is how the system works. In other countries, it was decided differently.
So let's come back to the refugees. Hundreds of thousands of refugees from Africa are passing through Libya every year on their way to Europe. In their desperation, they are being exploited, used, even enslaved by Libyan militias. What are you and what have you done until now to change this tragic reality?
Well, this is really, if you ask how I feel here, I feel very frustrated. Now, I go to these migration camps once every few weeks, and I see these people suffering, and they tell me their stories, how they lost their families, who were pushed out of away from the trucks, from Eritrea, from Somalia, from other countries, Niger. Now, what are we doing here? There are several things we are doing. First of all, we are improving the situation in the detention centers. These people are in the detention centers of the Libyans. We just make sure that there is enough space to breathe.
No authority, no police, nobody is listening to this government in Libya.
In the case of the migrants, let me prove you wrong, please, and let me severely contradict you. There is a governmental anti-immigration authority which is working. They are working in 23 of the camps. We try to be with them in the camps, financing the camps.
Kobler,
and
we also
submitted clear recommendations to the government what to do in order to make the situation
and
better.
Realities. Libya is where 90% of boats crossing the central Mediterranean are launched. The GNA took a deal with the Italian government to stop the ships, but the parliament in Tobruk stuck it down.
Yes, you're right. This is a big human tragedy. And the solution is to work for the implementation of the agreement and to have unified security structures and the restitution of state authority. As we agree that there is no state authority in the country, neither in the south, nor east, and in the west. Now, our plan together with the Libyans is to implement this state authority again. General Haftar, whom you mentioned, plays a role. Others play a role. The militias have to disappear at the end of the day. They have to be demobilized and they have to disappear.
Something. When is the end of the day?
I will not answer this question. And nobody can answer this question.
Not this year, not next year, not in 2 years, because if it is 2 years, you could answer to this question.
I do not answer the question on timelines because these timelines cannot be answered. But I know the timelines of the past. 42 years of Gaddafi dictatorship, who did not allow a strong army, who had the artillery in the east and the ammunition of the artillery in the west.
What was better?
No strong institutions, no strong state institutions. And it takes some time to institute the state institutions.
Gaddafi or without Gaddafi in Libya?
Gaddafi's system was overruled by the revolution. We have to deal with the situation we have now.
The Arab Spring was an illusion?
The revolution was done and Gaddafi was swept away.
The Arab Spring, which was also, it was a situation where everybody was so happy, also in the Western countries. It was a mistake or not? It was an illusion or not?
There was
Syria,
one big mistake.
Libya, Egypt.
In the case of Libya, it was a mistake that the country was left alone after the revolution, yes. I mean, one cannot say we intervene and then you continue with your revolution alone. I mean, the intervention of 2011, I think we all agree in hindsight, there should have been a second step, namely a very strong involvement of the international community in the build-up of the country and not to withdraw and observe the situation from outside.
That's a remark which brings me to the next question. Your mandate in Libya, as in many places before, to help facilitate democratic transition and to promote the rule of law. So many hopes, so many deceptions.
Indeed, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more that during the revolution there was hope. And I also acknowledge that it was the mistake of the international community then to have withdrawn and to have said, you do your revolution alone.
Can you understand?
Now we have to live with the situation and make the life better for people.
Can you understand why only few still trust the UN?
Yes, of course. By the way, the trust factor is much higher in Libya than in any other of the missions I was running so far. So the trust factor of the UN, you see, if you read this, so everybody criticizes the UN. There is a scapegoat factor for certain failures the Libyans should do themselves. I mean,
is it really like that? I mean, don't you feel sometimes that you are being used and that the UN serves as an alibi for the interest of Russia, China, America, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and a lot of other countries for their own interest, and then you are astonished that the UN has no confidence anymore?
No, I'm not astonished at all, because I totally agree. Our work is typically that we have to take care that we are not too overly manipulated, but not only by regional powers, but also by the Liberal Party whom you mentioned.
Your owners, I mean, your bosses, Russia. Russia is destroying a lot. Then in the UN, the alibi is working, and everything is still not good. I mean, the UN Charter, the political Bible for the protection of human rights, democracy, freedom of speech, rule of law. The broad majority is stomping on these human rights. In the UN, a room full of hypocrites and double standards?
Well, you see, the good thing of my job is that I can address these questions of the values of the United Nations very clearly. We are impartial, but we are not neutral. I represent the values of the United Nations and I speak up at each and every occasion.
But what's about China? What's about Russia? What's about North Korea? I mean, where are you starting and when are you ending this list?
Well, that's very clear. I'm starting with Libya and I end with Libya because my mandate is Libya. Detention centers, the situation is untenable, it's cruel, it contradicts every human kind of spirit. It contradicts the value system of the United Nations. I'm not tired to mention this. Be it the fragile government, be it General Haftar, be it everybody else. And you quote things out of my speech. I mean, quote also the things where I publicly, in front of the Security Council, speak up for human rights.
Martin Kobler, thank you very much for being in Conflict Zone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.